Well, we're fast approaching the final third of the EFL Championship season, and things are starting to hot up as we head into unpredictable season. We've got a battle for second, we've got a battle for the playoffs, and now a closer battle to relegation than we originally expected. Today we are here to predict matchday 31. We'll run through all 12 games this weekend, give you our score predictions, our preview, and our reasoning why. And of course, as always, I'll encourage you to do the same down in the comments. Get your predictions in for this weekend's action. And if you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in the recap, which will be on Sunday ahead of a full midweek fixture list. But for now, let's go and have a quick look back at matchday 30 to see how we got on there. And well, it all started so well, didn't it? Friday night, a perfect score for Bristol City versus Leeds, a 1-0 win for the visitors, and then it all went very wrong for the rest of the match day. A few correct outcomes for Hull, Southampton and Leicester's wins, but no others, and I missed out on a few scorelines narrowly. I also didn't go with my instinct on Norwich Coventry, which ended up costing me. But overall, 6 points, a pretty average match day by my standards. And I was about mid-table when it came to the comments as well, because 2 of you matched my score, and 6 of you managed to beat it with one particular impressive performance. So we start by saying well done to Peter and W and G, who joined me on 6 points apiece. Brian managed to get 7 despite no correct scores, which is a brilliant effort. 7 outcomes out of 12. Daniel got 7 as well with 1 correct score. On to 8, we've got Mitchell, one of the regulars. He picked up 1 perfect score too. Chris is on 9 in 3rd place this weekend with 1 perfect score as well. And then into double figures, 2 stand out. Simon with 10 takes 2nd place. 2 perfect scores for you and double figures. But the winner, a relatively new player along as well, Lewis with 13 points and 3 perfect scores. A brilliant effort from you for matchday 30. But can you all back it up in matchday 31? Let's look ahead to all 12 matches, beginning again on Friday night. Can I get predictions spot on again when it comes to Friday night football? It is a big game at the bottom end of the table as Sheffield Wednesday face Birmingham City. Wednesday just starting to come off the boil again, having had a really good run over the festive period. Since early January, it's been a bit of a disaster. This week, they've conceded 4 goals twice against Huddersfield and against Coventry in the Cup. Whereas for Birmingham, back-to-back defeats, albeit against Leicester in the Cup and then West Brom in the league. Very much a sign that the battle against the drop is not over yet. They're currently just 4 points clear of QPR, but under Tony Mowbray, against sides maybe a bit lower down the division, they have generally picked up points, which does make me think they might do this time as well. The problem for Wednesday is that the goals are starting to go against again, and they are starting to dry up in front as well. Only 3 goals scored in their last 6 matches in all competitions. Not as much of a problem for Birmingham, but they've not scored in their last 2 either. And Friday night football games on Sky are not normally the most entertaining, as last week evidenced with a 1-0 victory away from home for Leeds. What do I go for here? I might go a little higher scoring. I was tempted to go 1-0 Birmingham, but I don't really trust them to keep a clean sheet because they always seem to concede. So I am going to go for Birmingham to win. They've looked okay at times under Mowbray. And I'm going to go for 1 more. I'm going to go 2 goals to 1 for Birmingham City, who were pretty good away at West Brom, despite giving up a few easy chances. Let's move on to Saturday lunchtime, and it's a big game at the top end this time. 4th v 5th as Ipswich host West Brom. And Ipswich, my word, where did that come from? We obviously talked about the cup exit the week before, but in that game, I mean, they dominated against Preston. Let's not get things wrong here, because Preston North End never dominate a game, and they didn't against Ipswich. But Ipswich gave some really poor chances away, caught playing out from the back at times. They were brilliant going forward without being ruthless, and Kiefer Moore obviously made a big impact off the bench, but it's definitely not a cause for huge concern, but it is a worry, the manner in which they've conceded goals, both against Maidstone and against Preston, and it is now 5 games without a clean sheet in all competitions. For West Brom, another one of the Carlos Corberán specials. Not the best performance at home to Birmingham, albeit they did have the best chances in the match generally. But they gave up a few opportunities. They gave up a lot of set pieces, corners, etc. But he got the 1-0 win, and they're doing what Corberán's team does. He is eking the maximum out of that squad. And he's got them in 5th place, doing really well. And I think they've got a chance at Ipswich. I know they're incredibly strong at Portman Road, and they create chances. They're free-flowing. But it's the sort of game that they'll struggle to break a team down because West Brom generally are very solid and disciplined at the back. I could see this petering out with West Brom maybe nicking one on the counter and Ipswich dominating and forcing an equaliser. Kiefer Moore definitely adds an extra dimension that I think will help in games like this. But despite that, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw and get the Championship's favourite scoreline in early. Let's move on to the 3 p.m. kickoffs and we start with Blackburn Rovers versus Stoke City. Stoke humbled by Leicester, a 5-0 defeat. And something we've not seen under Schumacher so far is the team folding a bit. Now, let's be fair, Stoke have created some good chances there as well. They played well against Sunderland. They did okay against Birmingham. They just can't score goals. They're not ruthless enough in front of goal. They're then incredibly leaky at the back at times. And as soon as they show attacking intent, as you've seen Schumacher slowly try and evolve that style, they then become incredibly poor defensively. They're just 4 points above the relegation zone. That's 3 defeats in a row now, albeit 2 of them against sides in the top 8. And this starts to get the feel of a 6-pointer because it's 18th v 20th. Both sides are in trouble. Both sides have slid down the table massively. And with Blackburn losing at home to QPR, that relegation gap has closed for a lot of sides. Wasn't a good performance from Rovers. They had a couple of chances and maybe should have got a point. Of course, they dominated the ball, but defensively, their problems have been, well documented all season. We've talked about them countless times here. In the last 6 games in all competitions, they have conceded 2 or more on 4 occasions. They obviously let in 4 at West Brom and no clean sheets either. I think this is going to be a bit of a thriller. Stoke, if they're going to take chances, it's going to be in a game like this because they're going to be presented with a fair few. Blackburn will open up Stoke's defence. There is a little bit of a problem with the Blackburn signing they were trying to get in. I don't think they did the paperwork in time. The hearing is on the day this episode's being released, but I'm recording it on Wednesday, so I don't know the outcome of that. Might be a boost for them if it gets done. I'm going to sit on the fence, but I'm going to go thriller. I'm going to go for 2 goals apiece. Moving on next to a game that probably won't have 4 goals in it is Cardiff City versus Preston. Both sides actually picked up really good wins last weekend, but very different circumstances to them. For Cardiff, it was a brilliant goal from Josh Bowler in a game where they didn't really have that much, to be honest. A bit of a threat on the counter, but Watford edged the possession, the chances, and probably had the best chance of the game too. But a bit of individual magic provides a crucial 3 points for Cardiff and takes them well up into mid-table again. When we look at the other side of this though, Preston got a great win against Ipswich. They took advantage of poor defensive play, they forced mistakes, and Will Keane is in a real purple patch at the minute. But defensively they struggled with Kiefer Moore, and we know that Cardiff can be a threat from set pieces and have also got strikers of that ilk too. So it could be a difficult day for them defensively. As we mentioned, they never dominate a game. They got outplayed by Ipswich for the most part. But they are picking up points. That's 7 from their last 4 matches. For Cardiff, it was important to end the rot. This is the sort of game that Preston win. I've got a real feeling about it. I think Preston will probably do what Cardiff did to Watford. They'll come, they'll sit defensively, they'll let Cardiff have the ball, and then they'll hit them on the counter, and either Will Keane or someone will pop up with a moment of magic. So I'm going to go for an ugly 1-0 Preston win. But I tell you what, they're in the playoff hunt despite playing very poorly for the last 20 weeks or so. Let's move on to a game with 2 sides involved in very different battles. It is Hull City versus Swansea City. Hull currently occupy that final playoff place. They move up to 6th after back-to-back 1-0 wins against Sunderland and Millwall. Philogene looking a brilliant player. They have signed really well in January. Ryan Giles coming into the team. Carvalho having an impact. Zaruri obviously got a run out as well on Saturday as well. It is a real sign of things to come. They've got creative sparks in the team everywhere. It's almost a bit surprising that they're winning 1-0 at the moment based on that. But Swansea City, it's not started well for Luke Williams, has it? We talked about that Plymouth game being so crucial because they were playing all of the top 7 back-to-back with Plymouth basically in the middle. To lose that 1-0 and give Plymouth their first away win of the season, especially to a Morgan Whittaker bit of magic as well, it is a real sucker punch. Not just because of the game as well. They were so dominant, Swansea. I mean, you look at the highlights. I'd just go and watch the 2-minute highlights of that game if you haven't. How Swansea didn't score, you'll never know. I think officially they have 5 clear-cut chances. They had 20 shots on goal overall, but they were so wasteful, which they have been for a lot of the season. And they're another of those sides now, just 5 points away from the dotted line. So it becomes a very difficult spell for them. They've got to pick up points now against at least one of these top sides. And Hull away is not an easy trip, especially with them after back-to-back wins. So I'm going to go for Hull City to win again. I don't think it will be a massive victory. I think it will be fairly narrow. But Swansea City, they can see goals and they don't look ruthless enough. Not a good combination at the minute. I'm going to go 2-1 to the Tigers. I don't want to use the word for this next game, but we all know what we're thinking. It is Leeds United versus Rotherham United. It is 3rd v 24th in the Yorkshire Derby. Leeds won 4-1 at Plymouth after extra time in the Cup in midweek. They won at Bristol City in the league on Friday night with a really good goal from Nonso. They played well enough. They were comfortable for the most part. And Rotherham, it's just looking a bit too much, isn't it? We talked about last season making history by not switching divisions for the first time in 8 or 9 years. Well, this is starting to look a bit ominous, isn't it? No win in the last 6. They've not really been scoring goals. Blackburn away, the only time they managed more than 1. Southampton at home was always going to be tough. They're 23 unbeaten now, but they didn't really have much of a game of it. Southampton could have had more. They dominated the game. They dominated the ball. And when Rotherham have picked up points, like at Borough, they've not been in the game really. They've been hanging on to get points, and there's not really a suggestion that they're going to go in the right direction anytime soon. I do think in Liam Richardson, they've got a good manager, and in League One next year, they'll be very strong. And I hope that I'm proven wrong and they can go on a run to make it more interesting. But I just fear at the moment they're down. I mean, they've won 3 games all season, half the amount of anyone else in the division. So for me, I have to go comfortable home win. We know how Rotherham are going to set up. They've got to try and nick a point. But for me, Leeds will just have too much and they'll win by 2-0. Into the second half, we start with Middlesbrough versus Bristol City. Now, I should mention, as I'm recording this on Wednesday, that Bristol City are the only team's FA Cup replay I can't take into account. They're playing on Wednesday night. They've been 4 without a victory in all competitions. They were narrowly beaten at home to Leeds. And prior to that, it was obviously a draw against Coventry away from home. But they've not been able to get on the ball as much as you may have expected from a Liam Manning side. And while Leeds are very good, they're in that group of 4 that are running well clear of the division. It wasn't a great performance and they didn't really use the ball well when they had it. Didn't create an awful lot. I think only managed 1 shot on target in the end. Not many signs of goals, if we're being honest. But for Middlesbrough, much the same problem. A lot of territory, a lot of dominance in a lot of games, but no real goal-scoring threat. Only hit the target twice on Sunday, despite having a lot of good positions. Marcus Forss obviously did pop up with a very good finish, but then had to go off because of an injury after that. And overall, it's been a big difference for Borough this year. They've just not got that cutting edge that the likes of Akpom and Archer, and even Isaiah Jones, who has been out a lot of this season, have had. And it does make it very difficult to Borough to compete at the same level. You could see the runs Greenwood was making were brilliant, but again, not great in front of goal, not clinical. And that's what Sunderland did to them in the end to get a 1-1 draw. So this game is going to be quite a difficult one. There is the chance that if both teams take their chances, then they'll play at their best. There could be plenty of goals, but I'm going to stick safe. I'm going to go for 1-0. I was tempted to go for Bristol City. It could go either way in truth. And if you go for a Championship's favourite scoreline, you're probably quite sound there. Borough have had that in their last 2 league games as well. But I'm going to go for Borough to nick it. I'm going to go for a rare clean sheet for them and a 1-0 win. Hopefully the goalkeeper will have stronger wrists at any shots he face. Let's move on to another big game for QPR in 20 seconds. They host Norwich City, who are right on the cusp of the playoffs. Norwich left me frustrated and not backing my hunch and rolling head over heart with a big win at home to Coventry City. Yes, they got the winner after the visitors went down to 10, but it's a huge result. They played really well, over 20 shots on goal. And while we know Norwich's defensive frailties, they gave up a few great chances on the counter. On another day, Coventry take them. It's a frustrating day. But in possession and moving forward, they're starting to look like a more coherent team. And with Josh Sargent, we know they've got quality in the attacking line. Ashley Barnes came off the bench and set up the winner as well. So good signs at Norwich City, who are just 1 point off the playoffs. They go away to QPR, who have got 7 points from 3 games. And how crucial was that late equaliser against Huddersfield for confidence? Because then away at Blackburn, they were able to go 2 goals up. Okay, Blackburn defensively did what they do, but QPR were all right in that game. One of the things I'm more impressed with recently is that Cifuentes has adapted. He is a coach that likes to be possession-based, that likes to keep the ball, move through the lines. But you could see with this QPR team that he weren't creating enough while doing that. So they've moved to a slightly more counter-attacking style, a slightly more physical style of play. and it's definitely working for them, allowed them to create more openings. And while Blackburn always waste chances and give plenty up, look, QPR got the win and they went away from home, and they're going to have to do that a few times this year if they want to survive from their current position. They've certainly made it interesting at the bottom, and I think this will be an interesting game. It comes down to which strike force is more clinical. I would expect the stats to maybe look pretty similar for both sides at the end of this game for shots and shots on target. But I'm going to go for Norwich to nick it just because of the Josh Sargent factor, that extra clinical edge. I'm going to go for the goal scorer to win the day and Norwich to nick it by 2-1. Into the final third, we've got another one that falls into banker category. We've already had one, which means that one of these two is going to slip us up. We know it. It's Southampton versus Huddersfield Town. Still managerless Huddersfield at the time of recording, but what a win at home to Sheffield Wednesday. 4 goals in 12 minutes, started by the returning Matty Pearson, who is such a threat. Sorba, Thomas and Karoma joining the party as well. Okay, Sheffield Wednesday pretty much lied down after the second, but was really important that they got the result, and it keeps them 3 points clear, because if they hadn't won that game, if they lost it, they would have been in the bottom 3 coming into this match day. For Southampton, they're in brilliant form. A big win in the FA Cup replay against Watford. Sekumara joining the party of goal scorers. Very comfortable away at Rotherham with the game over at half-time the week before. And they're unbeaten now in 23 games. It's a remarkable run. I mean, Russell Martin has proven a lot of people wrong. He's got them up in the top 2 now. I thought he was probably on the cusp in October, and a lot of fans wanted him out. Let's not get that wrong. But it just shows what time can do. There are plenty of clubs that at that point have pulled the trigger in previous seasons. Look at Watford with Rob Edwards the year before as an example. And Southampton, they stuck with their man. They believed in their principles, and they're playing really well at the moment. This game petrifies me because you have to predict a home win, but you know that one of this or Leeds will slip you up. I'm going to go for Southampton to win again. I do think they'll concede this time because they've got a slight vulnerability to set pieces at their worst. And we know what the likes of Matty Pearson can do. I've talked about Sorba Thomas's delivery before. So I'll go for Huddersfield to get one. And of course, they could have a new manager bounce by then. I don't know. But I'm going to stick with Southampton, stick with a form book, and go 3-1 for the hosts. Let's move from the south coast to a side that have made the trip from there to the northeast. It is Sunderland versus Plymouth Argyle. Plymouth finally got their first away win of the season, a 1-0 at Swansea in a game where I think you can say their goal lived a charm life, because on any other day, let's say Joel Pirro had still been at Swansea, it probably would have been 3 or 4-1. But who cares? They got the win. They're up to 36 points. And you've got to say, Ian Foster has made an impact so far, because they're unbeaten under him in the league and they're unbeaten under him in 90 minutes. But in extra time in the week, how much of an impact will that play? They did struggle a little bit against Leeds. Just got carved open towards the end. But they had made a few changes for the game anyway. My worry is you've got Morgan Whittaker's played 120 minutes in midweek. People like Mumba and Hardy, who you'd probably expect to start as well. Is that going to have an impact in a game where, look, Sunderland are going to try and keep the ball? They came back into it late against Borough. I don't think for the first 70 minutes they offered a huge amount. I thought Borough were fairly comfortable. But they forced a goal by having a go. It was an okay strike, but let's be honest, the goalkeeper should have saved it. And after that, they then looked a real threat towards the end and could have gone and nicked it, created a few set pieces and whatever. But it wasn't still the display that makes you think, right, Sunderland are back in the groove now. But they are 2 unbeaten. They've got to build on those 4 points. And to be fair, when they've played against the sides lower down the division, they have generally been pretty consistent this year. For Plymouth, it's about the attacking threat. I mean, the chances are, after winning their first away game of the season, they're probably not going to win a second. I've got a feeling this is going to peter out. Sunderland should win it on paper, but for one of the home games that's a bit of a banker on paper, I've got to go for a draw. And this one, I'm going to chuck in a Championship's favourite scoreline of 1-1, just because Plymouth at the moment are refusing to be beaten and are not conceding many goals in the league. The final Saturday game is Watford versus Leicester City. You could say this is a bit of a banker as well, because Watford, after a promising spell, are now 5 without a victory, 3 without a goal, and they've not looked particularly good in any of their recent games. The first half against Southampton in the original cup tie, they were all right against the backup Southampton team, but the replay, they got carved open. At home to Cardiff, they were done by a bit of magic and didn't take advantage of chances they created. And overall, it's starting to look like a bit of a sticky spell again. But you look at the sides at the top of the division on paper, And Watford are building something a bit different this time. It's going to take a little longer. I don't expect them to be in the top six, and I don't expect them to win games like this. But the crucial thing for Watford, and the worrying sign maybe from the cup replay to other matches, is the laying down when you go a goal down or two down, which Watford under Ishmael have massively improved. They've got a lot more fight. They've got a lot more spirit. It does feel like he's changing that atmosphere at the club. But this game's going to be tricky, and it's going to be a test of that. Because Leicester, after maybe a slightly sticky spell, have come back with aplomb. They have scored 11 goals in their last 3 victories, 5-0 at Stoke, where they were at their clinical, ruthless best. Daka scoring, Vardy scoring, Iheanacho's going to be back soon. I mean, Dewsbury Hall's playing brilliantly. They look wonderful. They were comfortable against Swansea. The second half, they were clinical against Birmingham in the Cup after being very poor in the first. I mean, that's the thing with this Leicester team. They win games if they play poorly. If they're playing well like they are at the moment, you fear for whoever they're playing. So based on what we've seen in the last 2 weeks, I cannot go for Leicester to score less than 3. I can't really go for Watford to score because they've not scored in 3 matches. Of course, this is a game that has a real potential to trip us up while we're predicting. But for me, I just feel it's got to be an away win. I'm going to go 3-0. I feel Ishmael will try and set up cautiously, almost like the away team. I'm not sure it'll be enough. So I'm going for Watford 0, Leicester 3. And we finish on Sunday lunchtime with Coventry City versus Millwall. Millwall, another of those sides, just 5 away from the bottom 3. 5 without a victory in all competitions. And only 2 scored in their last 4 league matches. It's not really got going for Joe Edwards yet. And against Hull, they didn't really create an awful lot. It wasn't a great match, to be fair, but they only had 1 shot on target. Nothing clear-cut. A few set pieces, but I know Joe Edwards wants to change the style, but without the huge overhaul of players first, I just feel that they're not playing to their team's strengths. And it's what Gary Rowett did for so well for so many years at that club. And I do worry about them a little bit, I've got to be honest with you. They've not scored enough goals, only 30 this season. I think bar the bottom 3, only Stoke have got a worse record. We've talked about their problems in front of goal. And they're going to a Coventry side who, a little bit of a blip in the last week or so. The frustrating draw against Bristol City. Defeat at Norwich, where on the counter they could have created chances and scored, and probably would have drawn without that red card. But an emphatic response in a cup in midweek. They're now at home to Maidstone in the 5th round, and while Maidstone have worked miracles this year, they look at it and think if we play at our best, it's an FA Cup quarter final too. So really starting to build momentum at Coventry there. They're still 7th in the league. Mark Robins is just doing a wonderful job yet again. And I still think they're going to sneak into that playoff mix. So for this game, based on what we've seen recently, Coventry will have lots of chances and possibly take some of them. Callum O'Hare in home games has always found space. So I think Coventry will win this game by 2-0. And I think Millwall will probably need to start looking over their shoulder. But with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in matchday 31. 2 teams to score 3 goals, and it's the top 2. Southampton are home to Huddersfield and Leicester away at Watford. I've gone for a thrilling 2-2 draw in a battle at the bottom between Blackburn Rovers and Stoke. I've gone for QPR to miss the opportunity to get out of the relegation zone. And in a battle for the playoffs, I'm going for Hull and Coventry to win to keep pace in the battle for the top 6 and close the gap on West Bromwich Albion, who I've predicted to draw. But those are just my predictions for matchday 31. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below and give me your predictions for this weekend's action. If you beat or match my score, you'll get a shout out in Sunday's recap as we look ahead to a full midweek fixture list in the EFL Championship. Make sure you come and join us for that. If you enjoyed it, please do put a thumbs up on the video, subscribe and turn that notification bell on to stay up to date with everything across the podcast. We had our weekend Premier League predictions yesterday, which you can find up in the eye above if you've missed them. And of course, we'll have the League One shorts tomorrow, looking ahead to the weekend there as well. But thank you very much for getting involved. Your support is massively appreciated. How many of you will beat me this week? I'll see you on Sunday to find out.